Morning, Neil. Sean here in the very heart of London. Welcome one and all. This is a glitzy area, I might point out, very rich area, you know. I'm just passing through in case you're wondering. I often like to walk near money, don't you? Yeah, if you haven't got any, it's best to stand next to it, isn't it? It's a bit like that Penhaligon aftershave or fragrance that Prince Charles has launched recently. £152 a bottle through that very expensive company, Penhaligon. And I put in a PR request, as we do, and they said back to me, get this, if we're interested, we'll let you know. I think at £152 a bottle, you'd be interested in anybody that might be interested in that bottle, don't you think? Another one to scrub off the old Christmas list. Not that I could afford Penhaligons anyway. I'm sure, Your Royal Highness, it's going to be a huge success, but you might want to look into the PR on that, you know what I'm saying? Now, back as ever to what happened on this day. Lovely, as I say, to have your company today, and thank you one and all for remembering so much on the previous couple of days. Shirley Temple, oh yes, that created a bit of a furore, didn't it? Of course, a lot of people remember her with such fondness. I like the fact that her films are still shown today. Possibly my favourite, really, I think it's the definitive version of Heidi. Just a very clever story, beautifully acted, and when you think about it, she was perfectly cast also. But on this day in 1902, a thing that really sort of typifies glamour to me, particularly if you like cars, because in 1902 the Cadillac Car Company was formed. Now, obviously at the very beginning it wasn't the huge success that we know it is today, but as the years rolled by, and in particular with the advent of movies and movie stars being seen in them, most famously of course many movie stars were given them to drive around Hollywood because it was great endorsement. As I often say here on the show, nothing is new. Even today though, if a Cadillac pulls up outside your door, it does tell your neighbours everything, doesn't it? They've got money or they've won the lottery. One or the other. But it's nice to know a brand can still survive after all these years with so much, celebrity endorsement along the way. But as ever, there were other things happening along this period on this day. But what were they? On this day, 1964, you might have been asking this particular question, because the person who had that mega hit with this track was none other than the supreme recording artist herself, Diana Ross and the Supremes, with Where Did Our Love Go? Now, the track, of course, was a phenomenal success, as were so many from the Motown stable. But Diana Ross told me that when she first came to Britain to do a very now infamous Motown tour, they toured around the United Kingdom on a bus, going to glamorous locations like Grimsby, Glasgow, all that sort of stuff. And nothing wrong with those locations, don't get me wrong. But what's interesting is, you would have thought, wouldn't you, that that tour would have been better organised. That is going to be in your head all day, isn't it? Now, in 1770, with just a couple of days to go, none other than a true historical figure, one that really every school child of any age really should learn about, because it's these people that really paved the way for moments in history. And I'm proud to say this as a fellow Yorkshireman, Captain James Cook really stands out. He did so much, didn't he, in the world of discovery. And on this day, he was just a couple of days away from hitting Australia. He was born in Marton in Yorkshire, and I was kind of stunned to know actually that he sadly died aged only 50. But it just proves, doesn't it, that it doesn't matter how long you're here, it's whether you make your mark and live on in history. And I would say that Captain James Cook certainly does that. Now a man that's truly given so much in the world of entertainment. When you think about Noel Coward, you think of everything English, don't you? The cup of tea, the dinner suit, the smoking jacket, the cigarette holder. All stars loved him. Everybody from Judy Garland right through to Steve McQueen, Richard Burton, Michael Caine told me, who of course he starred with in The Italian Job. Just what a very clever man he was. He really straddled across everything from writing musical theatre, review, top 10 hits, then of course acting in films, directing, producing. Was there anything this man couldn't do? Well, seemingly so, because in 1945, riding high on the success of his mega movie Brief Encounter, Noel Coward decided to put out a brand new review in the very heart of London. Now, sadly for Noel, this particular review, Sigh No More, well, seemingly didn't connect with the many audiences that were still flocking to see Celia Johnson and Trevor Howard in his mega production of Brief Encounter. But as he put it, You can't win them all, and you just have to bounce back with the next one. And bounce back he did for many years to come. Now let's zip to 1974 on this day, because when you think about it, icons are born through sort of gimmicks, catchphrases and a look. This man had it all. We're talking Telly Savalas, who starred in the mega cop show of the 1970s, Kojak. Everybody knew Kojak, didn't they, for that phrase, "Who loves your baby?" He was the lollipop loving cop of the 70s, and he was one of the big icons of that particular era. Of course, Telly had had a huge success already in movies, but it was this TV series in 1974 that truly hit the top spot and made Telly Savalas an international icon, and the sales of lollipops through the roof. In fact, he had his own brand for a while, so popular was he. On this day in 1956, production started, well, the very early production started, on a movie that would become iconic and recognised around the world as one of the true and very first rock and roll productions, Love Me Tender. It starred, of course, none other than the icon himself, Elvis Presley. But even back then, you know, you have to smile. Everybody was trying to get in on the act. And there was talk right at the very beginning that in Love Me Tender there could be an appearance by Marilyn Monroe. Now, obviously she was incredibly big at that time, but even I couldn't see where Marilyn Monroe would fit in Love Me Tender. Apparently Elvis was keen, and why wouldn't he be? But she felt that a rock and roll movie wasn't her sort of, shall we say, area. And touted after that was none other than Cherie North, and following her, Mamie Van Doren. But sadly for Elvis, none of these blondes appeared in Love Me Tender. Finally, on this day, way back in 1987, go on, what were you doing come on, tell me, what were you doing? Don't say you were still at school. No, I don't believe you. But way back in 1987, sitting at number one around the world was none other than the birthday girl herself, Madonna. That's right, she was hitting number one with Who's That Girl? It was the theme tune from her latest movie of the same title. Sadly for her, it wasn't a mega smash hit, but let's just really give some celebration to Madonna, because she's 64 this month, still looks fabulous, and of course still making hit records, and set to have a number one album with a collection of 50, catch that, 50 number one dance albums that have hit the Billboard and dance charts around the world. Proof, of course, that you can't keep a true celebrity down. Now you're up to date with all that happened on this day. As ever, will I see you tomorrow? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.